Yeah. John. Hi.
Hello.
So we can walk down there where it's not so windy.
All right.
And
Let me get my wife. Doris?
yes.
I'm heading on down.
Un momento. And so today we are here at Smith Point.
Smith Point, Bolivar Peninsula.
And I was wondering if you want to chat a little bit and talk
Sure.
about the important things that we have in
Look
here.
off here, you see something that's rather unusual on the coast here, which is these big white oak, these oak trees. There's also large pine trees, and that's because we're on the high elevation area. That's the reason there's a peninsula here. This peninsula is actually an old barrier island that was existed 120,000 years ago during the last interglacial. And if you look at a Google image, in fact, even today you can see old beach ridges here on this peninsula. It's called the Ingleside Barrier. It extends all the way from Louisiana to South Texas.
Why is it important to study this, these geomorphological features?
Well, this is what some people have argued would be the high stand of a natural high stand of a true interglacial, meaning that you would have melted West Antarctic ice sheet and Greenland ice sheets, and raised. People have argued that if you melt those ice sheets, you would get about 5 meters of sea level rise. Well, the Ingleside Barrier here, which is the 120, is, that period of time, is about that elevation. It's about 5 meters above current sea level. So it's an old shoreline feature, and it's people have suggested, well, this supports the fact that during a true interglacial, you get sea levels that are roughly 5 meters above present.
Do you think that society, they really understand what you are doing in your specific discipline?
Well, it's kind of interesting. We're having right now unseasonably high tides in this area. It's a meteorological effect. But I get people writing me, strangers writing me almost every day asking me if this is sea level rise. And I write back and say, well, no, this is not global sea level rise. This is a meteorological event. But the fact that we're about a foot lower now due to relative sea level rise is resulting in this sort of nuisance flooding, which we read a lot about nowadays in EOS and places like that, places like Miami, that is related to the global rise in sea level, just like Venice, Italy, right? We have problems there with sea level rise that are not directly related to global sea level rise, but the fact that Venice is lower now than it was 1,000 or 2,000 years ago certainly causes these problems.
Hey.
She doesn't believe the story. I was pointing out that out here in the bay, where there's a tide gauge record right across over there somewhere on the other side on Galveston Island, where you see those buildings. That's been there over 100 years now. It was put there in 1900. It's one of the oldest tide gauge records anywhere in the world. It shows an overall sea level rise of about a foot, or roughly, that works out to about 6 millimeters per year for at least that area. That's actually a much faster rate than we're experiencing here, because it's down in an old river valley where subsidence rates are quite high. But the average sea level rise up and down the Texas coast is about 3 millimeters per year. That's the true sea level rise, the eustatic rise. And then we have subsidence that can cause that to be at least twice that amount. Our sea level records from this area, which go back several thousand years, tell us that the rate of sea level rise, the long-term rate, was about 0.5 millimeter per year. So that's roughly 5 to 6 times the long-term rate.
Do you think that students, they should do a little bit more than writing a paper?
I think they have to, because the entire scientific community is being attacked now, and we're being accused of being, this whole thing being a hoax, and that there's some great conspiracy on the part of the scientific community, which is the most outrageous thing, because scientists by nature aren't capable of pulling off a conspiracy, right? We're not geared towards agreeing with one another in general. But I think it's important, for us to convey to the public, because we do have a lot of people that find global climate change untenable for various reasons, especially with some of the political issues at bay now. I think it's very important. Well, the evidence for global climate change is indisputable. The sea level rise that we just talked about, it's measured by tide gauges, it's measured by satellites. There's no question about those rates. And that's scientific fact. That's not a theory. And the causes, for that, there are very few mechanisms that can explain these rates of sea level rise. And those boil down to heating the oceans and melting glaciers. And that's happening at a rate that's five times faster than it has been over the last several thousand years. At a time when we should start to see the rate of sea level rise actually starting to slow, we should theoretically be shifting back into a glacial. So the geological data is, my wife's calling.
That's fine, I can just take the
Oh, that's all right. You got enough there?
Yeah, yeah.